Welcome to the museum. We got branches everywhere, wheelchair access and subtitles for the visually impaired. Serving servicemen go half price, under fives get in for free. Yeah, but freedom isn't freedom unless someone makes a profit.
Good morning, Mr. Rob Johnson.
Good morning, Nick.
Welcome to your lounge.
Gosh, that's big time. I made my lounge.
Yes, it's becoming famous.
Yeah, thank you. Wet day, isn't it?
It is a lovely,
nice,
wet,
nice
typical English seaside
yeah.
day, really.
Yeah. I was born in Hackney, and I was brought up in Hounslow, West London, Isleworth, to be more specific, and I lived there in West London 6 years in Southall, which is lovely, Isleworth, Hounslow, till 2005. We arrived in Hove in January the 4th, 2006. It seemed like everywhere we lived in Hounslow was opposite the scene of some major naughty drug dealing, and as we just had two little boys, it didn't seem a good place to grow up in. So we thought, where's everybody vegetarian and progressive? Brighton. Let's go and move to Brighton. Only we couldn't afford to live in Brighton, so we ended up in Hove, which is very nice. Now Hove's apparently quite sought after. When we arrived, it wasn't. It was just Hove.
Yeah, my grandparents lived here.
Yeah. Yeah.
The music side of you, was there music around you in your family?
Yeah, there was. I'm very proud to say that my dad's dad, my grandfather Ern, he earned his living. Let's take it back even more. He survived the First World War because he was a musician. He was in the mission band and he was in the Territorials in 1914. And so when war was declared, the Territorials were called up. In those days, you'll find this hard to believe, but there was a time when musicians were valuable assets, because
surely not.
Yeah, I know. This is a long time ago. It's over 100 years ago. The army thought, great, this will cheer everybody up and keep the king entertained when he comes to visit the rear headquarters. So Ern was put into the 6th London Field Ambulance, but with the main function being to form a band for visiting dignitaries. And after the war, he joined a great dance band called Nonny and the Golden Serenaders. He played double bass or euphonium or anything else that no one else wanted to. I've got his banjo in the back room, and he played the London Windmill. We never closed, and nice girls with no clothes on, but because they didn't move, they weren't.
Do you know any of the songs he played?
No, this is really also really interesting. You'll see out there by the stairs, there's a poster for him appearing at somewhere like Sunderland Empire, and they played in Bristol. They say they played the Windmill, London's centre of taste for nudity, but mostly they played on the continent. And I've got his passport, it's got stamps from all the little different states, but mainly they played in Germany. And
after the war?
Between the wars.
Oh.
Between the wars. That's why they had to stop, because most of their work was in Germany, most of their paying work was in Germany, and they did pioneering radio broadcasts. But they had to knock it on the head in 1933 because Nonny was Jewish. The musical clown, I've got his photograph, was Jewish, and of course being Jewish in 1933 in Germany is not a good idea. My granddad, I'm very proud to say, was Jewish as well, because his mum was Jewish. Ernest Isaac Johnson. And here's another little bit of mystery. So he came back, they gave up, and only just depped in local bands and got a job working for the Gas Board, possibly, or the Board of Trade. But we've got this 1938 work permit. 1938, he goes back to Vienna, which is just about to be annexed by the Nazis. Only his work permit as a musician is in a false name. What he's doing going to a place that's about to have Nazis trampling all over it with false papers in 1938 is a bit of a mystery. And he did say that he smuggled someone over the Swiss border in his base case. He never told me, never elaborated on when, on what conditions, but I wonder if that's what he did. That's what he did in 1930. Anyway, so that's my musical background. He was
the one in your family, though?
Yeah, he was, yeah.
Did you know that before you started playing music?
I always knew he was a musician, and
right.
when when my nan died, he moved down first of all to Bexhill and then to Polegate with Reen, who never married because her fiance had been killed in the First World War. And so I went to Sussex University in Brighton. That's my first time in Sussex. And when I found sometimes I'd find that kind of middle class earnestness, or just I don't know, middle class is some of the students a bit too much. And I used to drive along the coast, see my granddad, and I'd talk about punk rock, and he'd talk about, being in the Golden Serenaders and stuff like that. And it was just great. He was great, really lovely man, loved him to bits.
But he was a multi-instrumentalist.
He could play anything, yeah.
Wow.
And my mum's dad had this marvellous piano in the back room of 24 Colwyn Crescent, Hounslow, which was one of those, you pedalled it and it played itself. And he had a great collection of musical songs. My mum's dad, Henry Robert, loved musical songs. His favourite song was Two Lovely Black Eyes. Only for telling a man he was wrong, Two Lovely Black Eyes. So I got that kind of background of the musical tradition certainly very strongly from my mum's dad. Well, I remember growing up enjoying, I know I could bore a whole class of infants to death by singing all the verses of Where Have All the Flowers Gone, around about the age of 7. I don't know why, but I could. I enjoyed immensely the singing of Rambling Sid Rumpo on Round the Horn. Just thought that was hilarious. So I was kind of growing up, and we also used to have Scottish country dancing at infant school. So I was kind of aware of a folk tradition, Kenneth Williams, and Scottish country dancing. And then of course as I got to I used to listen to a lot of film scores, loved Ennio Morricone, scores for The Good, the Bad and the Ugly and films like that. And then kind of discovered popular music around me. Well, I remember watching Top of the Pops and wanting to buy I Can See for Miles by my parents.
Great song.
Yeah, my parents talking me out of it or refusing to. And then they kind of didn't frown too much when I came home with Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah.
And Pete Atkin, Clive James. I still like Pete. We're still kind of friends. It was through Pete Atkin that I discovered folk clubs. I loved his records, and I found out he was playing in something called the Shakespeare's Head at the top of Carnaby Street. So up I go to Soho, pop into Cheapo Records, buy the first 2 Blue Oyster albums second hand, up Carnaby Street, and in I go to the Shakespeare's Head, expecting it to be like a rock and roll venue, like we had back in Hounslow at the White Bear, with speakers. And I was told the gig was upstairs and there was no speakers, and it turned out to be a folk club. I said, "Oh, what's this then?" With my 2 copies of Blue Oyster Cart's first album on the mail. And I said, "Well, it's a folk club. Anybody can get up and sing." The organiser told me. I said, "Oh, can I?" And he went, "No, sorry, no, you can't, Rob." So yeah, that's Pete Atkin. I thought, well, this is really good, nice and democratic. And I grew up in West London going to pub rock. Bands like No Sweat and Jeep, who probably I'm the only person alive who still remembers them, would appear at the White Bear in Hounslow. And basically these were really diamond West London geezers. Mostly I imagine they sold second-hand cars or did something dodgy. And they talked like that, lovely geezers, and they get up on stage, strap on a Telecaster, and suddenly they develop this amazing sort of Texas drawl as they sing about Highway 65 and Johnny Be Good and stuff like that. So that was my idea of music growing up.
At what age did you get your first instrument, your first guitar, presumably?
Well, I remember we listened to the Shadows, and I always wanted to play guitar, and I had piano lessons inflicted on me by my mother, which I loathed, and I managed to get out of those. And then the school offered a guitar lessons, so I signed up for that. But to my horror, it was nylon, twangy, finger picking, sight reading classical guitar, and it was awful. This is not what I wanted to do at all. But of course, in those days, if you sign up for something, they wouldn't ever let you go. But luckily, I shut this finger in a car door on a Sunday, so the nail ripped off. So I had a good excuse not being able to play guitar in these awful lessons anymore. So, and then about and that kind of fell dormant for a bit, and then round about 16, I had the misfortune to go to an all boys grammar school, completely accidentally. I had no idea where I was going, and I ended up there. And around about 16, I realised there was something called girls, and I had no idea how to talk to girls. But I noticed there was this kid in the year above who we called Yeti behind his back, obviously, because he was big and ugly. But he had no trouble talking to girls because he played guitar. So I thought this would be the way forward. So I bought a second-hand Eco Ranger from Paul, my friend Paul from the dodgy end of Bedford, and I set about learning 3 chords.
That's all you need.
That's all I wanted. I just wanted to talk to girls. I think I would also say that I'd always wanted to be a writer. I always wanted to write, and I didn't want to write poetry because that seemed a bit kind of removed from the people and the people that I knocked around with in Hounslow. I loved Sylvia Plath, but I couldn't really imagine Sylvia Plath having a Saturday job down the Cobb like I did. And so I thought, but it seemed to me at the time, if you wrote songs, if you played rock and roll, you could talk to anybody anywhere, and that would get over all those kind of cultural barriers that poetry often excited. And so yeah, to me, I kind of thought if you were called Bill Shakespeare at the end of the 16th century, you'd naturally want to work in the theatre because that was. And if you're called Charlie Dickens in the mid-19th century, you'd want to write novels. And if you were called Robb Johnson in the mid-20th century, you'd want to play rock and roll because you could talk to everybody then.
So really, it was for you. It was a way to find a way you could communicate with everybody.
Girls.
But it's particularly the girls.
Yeah. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. It seemed the most. It seemed the most exciting, autonomous, self-organised form of creativity I could think of, and it was immediate because you could form a band and go and play in a pub. You didn't have to jump through anybody's hoops. I was doing English literature at the time, and I loved English literature, but it seemed to me that you couldn't really have an opinion. They didn't really let you have an opinion. I found I wasn't really allowed to have an opinion till I did an MA. It was no good me saying Walter de la Mare's a shit poet because blah, 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 blah. It's no, you're supposed to like him. Oh, all right, but I don't. So there are all those kind of cultural barriers of exclusion or that you had to deal with if you wanted to be a poet or if you wanted to write novels. It just seemed a long process. Just pick up a guitar, learn 3 chords.
So what do you remember your very first song?
I'd rather not.
So that's a yes then.
I try and forget it. Vaguely, I think it was called Somebody Like You. Sadly, a lot of young men, lonely, inarticulate, socially awkward beings as blokes are. I mean, men only. Yeah, that's why men invented football, so they could have a code to talk through to each other, isn't it? That's it, rather than say, I'm feeling a bit sad, say, God, the team did really bad on Saturday. I feel a bit down. So, yeah, and we all seem to start. My son Arv writes songs, and because he's very intelligent, and not obviously, I'm a bit unhappy with my love life, but they comment upon that area, the difficulty relationships. One of his friends has just started writing songs because he had an unhappy relationship. So yeah, and also, in a way, around me, that's what people wrote about in the early 70s. But then, luckily, I discovered people like David Bowie and Ziggy Stardust, which is great. But that was angst on a whole mega scale. That was total sexual angst. That was great. I found that was much more exciting. I found that much more exciting than Free. All right, yes, and all those kind of blues rock. I'm going to love you all night long, and Led Zeppelin, Squeeze My Lemon. I just thought that was just crap. But I did think Bowie's kind of sexual confusion, and then Bowie was like this door. I'd gone to the record shop, opposite Hounslow Bus Garage to buy Simon and Garfunkel's Greatest Hits in the hope there might be something I hadn't got on it. And I just about to fork over the £2 of my hard-earned Saturday job. I look up on the wall and there's this poster of this bloke doing a teapot pose on a spa stool with strange clothing on. I went, who's that? And the bloke said, well, that's Sir David Bowie's new album Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars is out. I said, can I have a listen? It's 5 years. 5 years! Wow! The end of the world in 5 years. Cotton knelt and kissed the feet of a priest and a queer threw up at the side of that. What lyrics! This is for me. So David Bowie was the gateway, and then through him I discovered Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground. Whoa! Such intelligence, such racket. And then Iggy Pop and the Stooges, Raw Power. I mean, it kind of bewilders me now that everybody loves Iggy Pop. When I was like 17, no one I knew liked Iggy Pop. Every time I put it on, everyone went, what the fuck's that? And I wasn't sure what it was either, but I knew it was really good. And I would say if there's one album that I want put on my chest as I hit the flames in the crematoria, it's Raw Power by Iggy Pop and the Stooges. Yeah, so such racket and such energy. And I just thought that's wonderful. And so that kind of made me think you can write about more than just about the infernal longings of your underpants, which is what Bad Company and all those kind of blues rock people used to do. And I just thought deeper. I just thought it was patently nonsense. And people like the Velvets and Iggy, they had a much more complicated, darker and edgier understanding of the world. And all with 3 chords mainly. So Sister Ray, just one, I think.
At what point did you start gigging? Was it on solo effort, or did you form a band?
Form a band, you had to form a band. You had to form a band. I can't remember. We formed a band called Cats, I think it was, and we had 2 gigs. One was in a youth club, and one was for a school parents evening, a school parents group social. And for the school parents group social, Tony the bass player said, we've got to learn all these old jazz songs like Show Me the Way to Go Home because they're going to be old. Okay, so we learned that. And
you did rehearse?
We did rehearse, yeah. But half time, in the first half, they all clearly were enjoying the noisier stuff. So I remember at half time teaching the band Vicious by Lou Reed. It's 3 chords, that's all you need. And so it was bands, and I can't remember when I first did a solo gig, but it was because I discovered folk music thanks to Pete Atkin, and then thanks to my girlfriend at Reading University, who went to see Jeremy Taylor. Folk clubs are packed. They were sort of full of people. It was really exciting. I thought folk clubs were really, really exciting because one of the things I disliked about rock and then later punk was the obsession with image and the obsession with physical presentation. And I suppose kind of growing up, I sort of grew up at the fag end of the hippies, and man, you just dressed like you felt like, man. And although it was kind of stylish, it was dressing down, and it was kind of, and it was scruff, and you didn't have to you weren't trying to impress anybody. I had the perhaps mistaken belief that it was about expressing how you felt like, not trying to impress anybody else. And then I discovered the Stooges and MC5 around about 1972, and the Velvets, and I just wanted to play that kind of music. We used to do. Then we had a band called Edge, and we'd do gigs, and I'd be banging away on 3 chords till my fingers bled, and punky style, and people would say, "Play rock and roll." And then by the time punk happened, I discovered folk music, so I kind of missed.
Yeah, your timing wasn't as great.
My timing has always been impeccably bad.
But were you at this stage? Were you playing mostly covers, or were you?
No, I always wrote. I always wrote songs, because by the time I had worked out that a guitar was the easiest thing to hide behind when you wanted to talk to a girl, almost everybody else in my class had worked that out 6 months earlier. So they already knew how to play the riff to Layla nonchalantly, and I started. I write my own songs. It seemed easier.
And were you successful?
No. No, again, this is a story of my life. But I've always been interested in writing songs that were about the whole, a wider spectrum of existence than just the kind of romantic tosh that Ed Sheeran comes up with. You know, like life isn't just about that kind of stupidly codified romanticised sexual longing that popular music seems to deal in, and I think that's almost like a control mechanism. If you know, like if you focus everybody's attention on the idea that you get the perfect love and that's it, you're done. You don't have to worry about anything else. You don't have to worry if you haven't got a job or if there's a war happening. You just fall in love. You'll be all right. That's clearly wrong. I have written love songs, but I try to make them as part of
a broader context.
Yeah, and also because there are so many love songs, there are so many cliches involved in love songs, and I try to avoid cliches, and if I do inadvertently fall into cliches, I like to be able to try and use them with a kind of sense of
irony,
yeah, or just a sense of control. I try to write songs that are both authentic expressions of what I feel and think, but that know when they're using a cliche. Let the amp warm up. This is one of the nicest things that's. Go on, amp. There we go. One of the nicest things is that I've been playing in Belgium since 1995. Not every year, and often it's been dependent upon getting gigs. But I love playing in Belgium because you can play in a bar, and actually, in Belgium, if you do something political, they go, that's a socially engaged song. And they don't go, oh, you're political. I think often within this chanson tradition, people are alert to the fact that you can write about different things. So this is a song about how nice it is playing in bars in Belgium, which I fear I might not be able to do anymore. Here's to the bars in Flanders, in the flatlands around Bruges and Ghent, the ones you walk into, and when you walk out, you wonder where 20 years went. Here's to the wood and the mirrors, and those ghosts at the back of the bar. They don't have career plans, but night after night they can bring you the moon and the stars. These old magicians, analog accordions, goodbye guitars. These old magicians, they bring you the moon and the stars. Beer fills the glass that's half empty. The song fills the bar that's half full. You see how the trick works? It's magic. It's all made of magic after all. These old magicians, accordions, goodbye guitars. These old magicians, they bring you the moon and the stars. You see how the trick works, it's magic. It's all made of magic after all.
Some of that, I mean, that's a great piece in the storytelling history of musicians. When they used to be more like troubadours, they used to travel around and talk about what was going on in the world, really. And that's kind of partly, I think, what you do. You're kind of telling the story of what's going on in the world. Of course, in those days, they relied on you. Could say anything. You say, "Well, I saw this country get torn apart by dragons." Oh, that's great. Yeah.
But that's the folk tradition, isn't it?
Yeah,
Story, ballad, storytelling.
Exactly, and there's always been the fake news tradition. You write, and I saw you described as one of the last political songwriters, which is maybe not something you're comfortable with being called, but
That's difficult because I have so many answers to this question.
maybe actually a different way of phrasing it would be socially aware rather than political, because I think from what I've seen there is quite a strong political bias to some of your records, but I think some of it is also there's a social context that you're very involved in, I think, and I think the two may not always marry up.
Well, the thing is that I think if you say anything other than "I want to love you when we're old," they think you're political. If you say anything that makes a comment, you go political, social, political, and they do either two things. They either say we don't like that because we just want a good night out. Don't trouble me with reality, or they go, "Oh, you're just agitprop," or they go, "Oh, we got Billy Bragg, thank you much, Rob, just fuck off." So, but I think that when I was saying about the music, everything is political. When I was growing up, just listening to rock and roll was political. Our culture was political because it was ours, and for a while, the rest of society didn't have any ownership of it. If you go back and look at, I'm thinking that there's this great Norman Wisdom film called, I love Norman Wisdom. Norman Wisdom's chock full of politics. That's why he was so popular in Albania, because it's just ordinary, everyday politics. He's the little man. There's Jerry Desmond is the toff, and there's Mr. Grimshaw, the middle class. And it's just infused with an understanding that society is political. And then there's this great film in the 60s, I think it's Sauce for the Gander, where you can see that popular entertainment culture realises that pop culture is something that's actually beyond their control, and so they try to create this Norman Wisdom film that involves pop culture. And so for a while, popular culture was seismic and was very political, just of its very nature. And you had kind of conscious underground, a conscious underground like the wonderful Mick Farron and the Deviants, and then you had this people like Rod Stewart who just basically became accommodated. Once the machine worked out how to accommodate you, people like Rod Stewart happily accommodated themselves to it. So, but it was always, every work of art freights political meaning. So I would say that in my writing I'm just conscious of that and try to make sure that, like when I'm using cliches, I'm freighting a political meaning that I want to freight. Also, in the mid-70s, I came across Victor Hara, the Chilean songwriter, and I realised that music, like novels, can be part of a way to create a better society. I realised towards the end of the 70s that we could improve things. And certainly when Thatcher came along, I realised that you shouldn't stay neutral, because, as we see so many years later, Thatcher started a process of damage that means that in 2020 the life chances of of my sons, your sons, everybody's children, their life chances are less than mine were. In 1945, my dad, his generation, they said, we want something better for our children. We don't want to have another world war, because if you leave things to the toffs from Eton, they'll cock it up, which they did in 1914 and they did in 1939. So in 1945, ordinary people said, we'd like a Britain that's better for everybody. So I was lucky. I grew up in a Britain that was fair to me. So this was sparked by going to the Museum of Communism in Prague, and I look forward to the day when there's a Museum of Capitalism somewhere. Welcome to the museum. We got branches everywhere, wheelchair access and subtitles for the visually impaired. Serving servicemen go half price, under fives get in for free. Yeah, but freedom isn't freedom unless someone makes a profit. Plague ships came from Europe, sailed across the sea to buy the human beings to put the sugar in your tea, the cotton in your factories, the big house on the hill for the few who make a killing, while the millions just get killed. See how the West was won. See how the West was won. See the boys becoming soldier boys, girls becoming whores, Coca-Cola, General Motors sell to both sides in the war. See the system always failing, always going, never gone, saved by fascism, Stalinism, all those neoliberal cons. See the great age of repression, hunger, ignorance and want. See the great age of distraction, all those fast food restaurants. See the great incarcerations, the systematic use of regime imposition, all the cultures of abuse, degradation, radiation. Count those disappointed dreams, drown in death and disappearance. Hear the silent howl and scream. See how the West was won. See how the West was won. Far too long. Far too long. See the great age of celebrity, all the presidents, kings and queens, reality commodified to pixels on a screen. See the great recuperations, sex and drugs and rock and roll, how they used to be subversive, now they're more like national service. Our displays are interactive, sir, if you're a member or a friend, which genocide are you on, sir? It's the joke that never ends. Oh, we're all postmodernist comedians now. No one gives a damn if your souvenirs of Disneyland were made in Vietnam. Cause history's over, written by the winners, and the losers, well, tough shit. Siemens make great ovens. They had the factories in Auschwitz to prove it. You want poetry? You want poetry? Nah. You want just another la la love song? See how the West was won. See how the West was won for far too long.
When it comes to the songwriting process, right? And this, I'm looking forward to hearing this from you because it's going to be possibly slightly different to the average person. We ask them, what comes first? Is it a lyric? Is it a piece of music? In your case, it might be an article in the newspaper.
In my case, it's an idea. I think the best songs start with an idea that you want to say something about something. Even if it's about the fact you're unhappy with your trouser situation, it's the idea that you're unhappy. And for me, the process is this: the idea generates some words, and the words generate some music. And I think the words kind of drive the music, and then at a certain point, the musical structure might guide the final lyrical development. It starts with an idea, and the idea contains within it the seed of, does it want to be fast? Does it want to be slow? Does it want to be gentle? Does it want to be angry? And then the words kind of locate a melody.
And you talk very passionately about politics, but you're not always as serious in your songs.
No.
And I noticed that in many of your songs you do it in a very comedic way, and you attack things, because sometimes belittling something in comedy is more effective than ranting at it.
And of course, I having had that long blab about no art being neutral, one has to remember the function of art is to entertain, delight and wonder, to encourage wonder and delight. So I am kind of aware of that. I think that I would hope that, although I think I get pigeonholed and sidelined as understood simply as someone who's the last truly political whatever. Very few people who do accidentally stray into one of my gigs, people don't walk out going, that was rubbish. People generally get entertained. I do hope that I am entertaining, because I believe you have a shared function, don't you? As a performer, you need to treat your audiences with respect. I mean, I remember seeing Lou Reed treat an audience with disdain. It was kind of quite funny, but at the end of it, I thought, oh Lou, we paid our money to see you. Come on, you could do better than stand at the edges of the stage and go, that's more than you deserve. You know. So I think that I do like. I mean, I like people being happy with what I do.
There aren't that many, I think, that write about politics as passionately as you do in terms of their songwriting, whether it's using a comedic tone or whether it's using a serious tone. But I think a lot of musicians now are trying to just become more popular, and I think and therefore
the drift to the centre,
the drift to the drift to the centre, the drift to the beige, the drift to the neutral. It happens more and more, but and I think there's a place for everybody, especially in live music. And maybe sometimes what you do works better live than it does on record. I don't know that. I'm just saying that, because they see the passion, they feel the passion. You were talking to me earlier and saying about how sometimes you think the film distracts from the message, from the song, but if you see somebody live, you're kind of getting that whole visual.
Yeah, you're also part of that. Well, that's the great visceral experience, aren't you? You're in a darker room, and there's and I think no matter how good your means of reproduction are, whether it's a screen or speakers, there's nothing comes close to just being in a room and being part of the sound experience. Like, let's say, I've seen Zaz, and she's much better live. She's much better live. The albums are beautiful, but live, it's like opening a door to the TARDIS and finding endless three-dimensional rooms of music. There's always the money for missiles and tanks. There's always the money for generals and banks. There's always the money for new ways to kill, but a limited budget for you if you're ill. Yes, there's always enough for a war, and there's never enough for the poor. There's always money for tunnels and roads, for opera and ballet, but not jobs and homes, for MPs' expenses, fat subsidies, but there's never enough for nurseries, and the well-off, they always take more, so there's never enough for the poor. There's always money for tests they can pass, or fail you for not being white middle class. There's always the goodies for those with most greed, but there's never enough for those in most need. There's a pay rise if you're on the board, but there's never enough for the poor. Consider the little of life that we know. We bring nothing, take nothing, pass through and go. We're all of us poor when it comes to the night, in need of the darkness, in need of the light. If we learn to want less and love more, there'll be enough for the poor, 'cause there's more than enough, more than enough, more than enough for us all.
Great. It's so simple and so effective. There's a poetry about a song that really works.
Yeah. Oh,
Tell me, have you any plans to change what's happening in the future in terms of what you're writing? You continuing to write. Do you still feel the energy and the emotion?
A bit written out, because I wrote lots of songs before Christmas, and I've only written one. I've only written one this year, which is a bit kind of bleak. So I'd like to write some happier songs.
But the world won't let you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the world doesn't let you do that. Yeah. Usually something happens, and I think I better write something about that. I just got asked to write something for a campaign to stop the back of Brighton Hospital, the wasteland air being sold off into private hands. So unfortunately, why complain if you get work? Once people know that you write these sort of songs, then you write these sort of songs.
And they specifically come to you to hear those sort of songs as well.
They do. I remember when I was quite proud when I had an album called Night Cafe. Someone gave it back to me and said it wasn't political enough. So I just think that, I talked about a contract between a performer and an audience. I think also you have a right to do. Artists have a responsibility to try and do work that's authentic. They have a responsibility not to offend the powerless. They have a duty to offend the powerful, if they can get away with it. But they have a duty to try and write authentic.
But they shouldn't pigeonhole you either, should they?
I think that's a terrible thing, isn't it? That we say this is country and western, this is all country, this is punk. Oh.
I've seen, interestingly, and you probably wouldn't agree with this, but I saw it when I was doing some research of you, and it came up and it said what sort of genre, and it said folk punk. Yeah. And I thought, well, why?
Well, I used to bash three chords out lots and lots.
Okay.
And I still can if
the need arises.
Yeah. It's difficult because you get an audience that expects you to bash three chords out and swear occasionally, and they get a bit miffed if you don't. So it's kind of balancing people. I don't have a huge audience, but I'm aware that there are songs people come to gigs to hear, and sometimes you think, do I really want to play that? Do I really want to? So there are lots of three chord sweary songs.
I read a quote that you made which said, I enjoy electric guitar at noisy gigs. So, in other words, you do like having a bit of a bash around with a full band, especially.
Yes, ever so. Yeah, that's well, who wouldn't? I mean, most of the stuff I listen to, I say, is like my default setting is the Velvet Underground and Iggy Pop and Johnny Hallyday. People with electric instruments. But you know what it's like. It's hard finding the venues, and B, bands don't get paid as much as if there's four people in a band, you don't get paid 4 times 100 quid. You get paid 100 quid. Or if it's just you on your own, you get paid 100 quid. Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, you've got a song to play, haven't you?
Well, I have, because it reminded me. I use this guitar. It's quite nice. Yeah, I played in Castle Inn in Port. Oh, what's that place? Where the Ancient Mariners set in Somerset, and there was nobody there, and they were very pleased to have me because I brought 3 men and a dog in, and so that was great. And they booked me back again. And but meanwhile, the landlord had discovered an even surefire way of getting people in, which was called turning his pub into a gastro pub. So I turned up to play, and the place was full of people that my songs are full of, usually not very complimentary terms. So I'm playing away, and there's a wag in the audience who insists on heckling me, thinking because their idea of a night out is going to stand-up comedy. And then suddenly the landlord comes up and says he needs to use the microphone. He says, "Now you're all here, don't forget, next Tuesday night we've got community bingo," like it's the cross between the Second Coming and the resurrection of Lady Diana. So this wag goes, "Have you got a song about community bingo?" I go, "I have now." Citizens get Tuesday nights community bingo. We got a list of names of boys who went and never came back. From all those wars to end all wars, from Flanders Fields to Iraq. All that Stoke and Tory glory jingo. What do we get? We get Tuesday nights community bingo. One has T for Texas, and then there's T for two. Ooh, Tuesday nights community bingo. We ain't seen a train since 1964. Post office closed last week, we got no buses running anymore. But it ain't all homemade marmalade and heroin though. Oh no, 'cause we get Tuesday nights community bingo. Yeah, we get Tuesday nights community bingo. We get Tuesday nights community bingo.
Your magnus opus, as you called it,
Yes.
Ordinary Giants.
Giants, yes.
Now, apart from, I know this has quite a big political content, but it's also you're really delving into the past and into your family history, into the country's history, and informing yourself as well as others about how you feel about that, how they felt about that, and it's a 3 CD set,
Yeah.
which is a lot.
It grew.
So, and some of it's spoken, I believe, as well. So,
Yeah.
talk to me a bit about that.
Well, in 1997, I got asked by the Passion del Peace concert to write a song, to write their annual concert, because both my grandfathers, both Ernest Isaacs and Henry Robert, were both present at the Third Battle of Ypres, Poor Loves. So I love my granddads, and so I wrote their stories in song, not just about their time in the trenches, but I wanted to show that they were people with lives before the war and expectations and a social context, and I had lives after. They were luckily they both survived, although my mum's dad got gassed and that ended his life a bit early, but they both had lives after the war. So that was very successful, and I was ever so lucky to have that opportunity. But having done that, I always knew that at some point I was going to write about my dad's life, because my dad was in the Second World War. And it seemed that the obvious thing to do, to continue the family history of the glorious 20th century. So I kind of put off doing it. My dad died in 2013. I put off doing it, and then in 2017, long story short, I found myself back opposite the school where my dad was the head teacher for most of his life, and I thought, well, if not now, when? So I started writing, and it was originally going to be like following the kind of model of Gentleman. My dad's life before the war, my dad's experiences in the war, my dad's life after the war. And then it started spiralling out of control in a way. I started the spoken word because I found I wanted to say things that my dad's life history didn't encompass. Like, my dad volunteered to fly in 1939 because he believed that was the only way you would stop the fascists, but he hadn't been at Cable Street. So I invented a character called Lou, based loosely upon my great aunt Gladys, who was my mum's family's only Labour voter, So she gets all the kind of details and the statistics. She's got 4 narrative, and I modelled them on Stanley Holloway album, the line monologues. So then I thought, well, perhaps we need an alternative voice, a kind of right-wing bigot to offset Lou's narrative. So I invented a right-wing voice that kind of bounces off and talks about how outrageous it is that Mosley's been stopped at Cable Street by the Jews, how outrageous it is happening in Britain, and celebrating that Scargill's been arrested. So there's the spoken word. And then I found myself inventing characters. I've never done this. Having invented a couple of characters, I then found myself inventing characters to cover gaps in the narrative, and I wanted to explore what happened to them. So it started with, I thought it might be a double CD, then it grew into a triple CD.
So one character begat another, as it were.
They did, yeah, and
they kept on begetting.
And their histories, their stories. People would turn up once, and I thought, oh, so what happens to what would happen to them when they grew up? My dad started teaching in 1949 in a bit of a rough school in Brentford, and so I've got a character singing from his class about being taught by my dad.
Did you write a booklet with this?
Yeah, it comes complete with a booklet.
It needs it, from what I can understand.
Yeah.
Perhaps you'd like to play, let's say, one of your favourite songs from that.
I will, yes, I'd love to. I would love to. The shadows fall across the airfield, the silver birds sleep in their nests, the summer days will soon be over. We watch the light fade in the west, a cold east wind, the sound of thunder, unwanted news, unwelcome guests. How many leaves will soon be falling? We watch the light fade in the west. September's song, September's song, and with a storm, the wounds of winter that freeze the hands that once caressed, and we shall weep till eyes are empty, and watch the light fade from the west. September's song, September's song. The station clock has hands of stone, little while. I stand alone. How will our hopes and all our bright ideas endure as minutes turn into years? September song, September song,